close and personal. Get enough attention. Oh man, are you all man want to know? Me no visit the girl them when everything them. Oh man, no good from head to toe. Up close and personal. Get enough attention. Oh man, are you all man want to know? For the shape where you have, you get a triple A plus. Man, heart and beat fast and pulse in a rush.
Last time on the show, we had read from The Selma of the North by Patrick D. Jones, the civil rights insurgency in Milwaukee. Working on the chapter, Father Groppy's Civil Rights Awakening. Father James Groppy, local civil rights leader. Groppy brought back from Selma more than an invigorated spirit and expanded commitment to the cause. He also returned with a particular strategic approach to social change. According to Flood, Selma was the basis for Jim Groppy when he came back for the demonstrations in Milwaukee and for how to create a movement. The most basic principle in Groppy's approach was action. As Margaret Rosga explained, what Groppy saw as the main problem was that nobody was doing anything, so he was going to do what was within his purview to do. There were lots of people who prided themselves on being great thinkers and great strategists, but didn't do it. I think what Groppy saw was that people were so busy planning grand strategies that they never took step one. This emphasis on action was consonant with the directive to observe, judge, and act of the inquiry method that Groppy had learned from his mentors. Because action was central to his approach, specific issues, for example, housing, employment, education, and police brutality, were less important to Groppy. It didn't matter what issue you pursued, Rosga explained, because it was all this tangled ball of yarn. No matter which end you pulled on, you ended up getting involved with the whole mess of racism. She continued, a lot of things that Groppy picked up on as issues were things that people brought either to St. Boniface or the Youth Council and said, this is going on and nobody will help us except you. And he would never say no to somebody like that. Groppy was clear about the kind of action he wanted to see, nonviolent, direct action. He pointed to a speech by Dr. King in Montgomery as a major inspiration. Dr. King said that hate was psychologically destructive and that the only way that you were going to survive psychologically in this movement was through the adaptation of nonviolence, not only as a tactic, but as a philosophy of love. And he said that it is a state in life that none of us will ever attain to its greatest perfection, but it is a state that all of us must continually strive to attain. Similarly, Groppy was deeply moved by the sight of a young black student in Alabama who, while being viciously clubbed by policemen, simply repeated again and again, I love you. For the young priest, this was the ultimate in sacrifice and courage, but Groppy also understood that militant, nonviolent, direct action was rooted in confrontation. Here again, Groppy was deeply influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. Writing from a Birmingham jail cell in 1963, King revealed that the purpose of nonviolent direct action was to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks to so dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. With the help of the mass media making the world its witness, militant nonviolence promised the power to move recalcitrant public institutions and sway the public conscience to justice. The Milwaukee priests had experienced this firsthand in Selma. Grappi embraced this vision of a coercive nonviolence and would apply its lessons to a series of dramatic campaigns in Milwaukee over the next 3 years. There was a spiritual component to militant nonviolent direct action as well. For Father Grappi, it was through nonviolent activism, he thought, that individuals came face to face with racial inequality, met their fears, and were personally transformed. The direct standoff between good and evil clarified the issue of race relations and forced the individual to choose sides. In the emotional maelstrom that ensued, the individual often felt spiritually invigorated. With each new encounter, the commitment deepened. Grappi was confident that if he could get people active, they, like him, would be swallowed up by the cause. They, like him, would have their own civil rights conversion. On a large scale, this process might even redeem the soul of a nation. As King liked to say, for Grappi, like King, nonviolence held out the possibility of individual, national, and even global redemption through change and reconciliation. It was a transformative force. Grappi concluded that nonviolence, like action, is a tremendous Christian spiritual doctrine. After Selma, Father Grappi plunged headlong into the ongoing school desegregation campaign. Within weeks, he was elected second vice president of music and was pushing the group to adopt a more militant strategy. Music had been stymied after 2 years of work inside and outside the system. Frustrated, Lloyd Barbie filed suit against the Milwaukee School Board and federal court. On May 17th, Music's executive board voted to organize a second school boycott in October, this time for 3 days, and approved a direct action program. A week later, music activists initiated a 3-week human chain-in campaign outside several inner core schools. Father Grappi's first arrest occurred on June 4, 1965, while blocking a bus at Seifert Elementary School. It was the first time a Milwaukee priest had been arrested during the Civil Rights era, and as a result caused quite a stir throughout the city's Catholic community. Church authorities and lay people informally debated this curious young clergyman and the proper role of a priest. When traditionalists criticized Grappi for demonstrating in the streets and for breaking the law, he shot back that the role of the priest was to be involved in the community. When it came to intact busing, Grappi believed that he had a spiritual responsibility to be out ahead of the flock, a flock that now embraced Catholics and non-Catholics alike. In front of the symbols of segregation, blocking buses, to him, faith, conscience, and priestly obligation dictated his response. However important Grappi's individual leadership in Milwaukee, and regardless of the hot media glare he attracted, Grappi was not alone in his crusade. After Selma, Milwaukee Catholics in general played a larger and more visible role in local civil rights activism. Newspaper accounts of a music-sponsored Freedom March in August 1965, for example, noted that Catholics made up roughly 1/2 of the 500 to 600 total demonstrators. And throughout that fall and winter, reporters curiously observed the increasing number of white collars and dark habits at civil rights demonstrations. On a more personal level, Pat Flood continued to be a primary ally and confidant of Grappi throughout the civil rights era. What Jim and Pat said between each other, Margaret Rosca explained, was that Jim was the person that shook the tree and Pat was the person that picked up the apples. Grappi was the public activist and outspoken voice of the movement. Flood worked largely behind the scenes by organizing meetings and negotiating. Activism also accelerated the associations among the 5 inner core parishes. According to Flood, priests and none in those 5 parishes came together into a very strong and committed community because of those boycotts and civil rights. That bond was formalized in the fall when the diocese established the Council on Urban Life, the CUL, made up of members of the inner core parishes, and the CUL was connected to a broader interlocking network of individual nuns, priests, and lay people, Catholic action formations, parish councils, and more formal bureaucracies, such as the Catholic Interracial Council and the Greater Milwaukee Conference on Religion and Race, which stood ready to act. Tune in next week for the continuation of The Selma of the North, the Civil Rights Insurgency in Milwaukee by Patrick D. Jones.
You're now on a new adventure with P, where I write and recite words intricately. Through the shuffle, the hustle and bustle, I unruffle through feathers, seeking out new endeavors. I've reigned by gliding on the outside lane all day on them, even down south, doubt name ring bells. On the head, on the rag. Pretty girls wanna peg, straight thunder. I stay stunning them, but stay under the radar. The radar. XP, other rappers ain't seeing me. Still in your sector, low pulse on all coasts. Lurking in the underground. I make moves, no doubt, but y'all won't see me. Passion fools, large pro. I stay getting down. Other rappers ain't seeing me. Lurking in the ranks. Let them know who's holding it down. Large professor, large pro. This is legendary P status, worldwide fame. Ex-pro on the mountaintop, bird's eye aim on the suckers. Chuckers and jivers who ain't as live as eyes is. Coming in at all shapes and sizes. Pretty puffed up, industry clones is getting banned. Whenever I step inside the jam, bringing realty. Paving the way like the DOT on them. I beat them not having to join them. It's Wilhelm, always telling people how I feel, fam. Sharpening the skills and letting them know. On the boulevard mission, I'm ready to go. Tip time, any place, any area code. It's that boss like guy with the on-point foresight. Hotter than July, but colder than the frostbite.
Chapter 40 of the Tao Te Ching reads, "The movement of the Tao consists in returning. The use of the Tao consists in softness. All things under heaven are born of the corporeal. The corporeal is born of the incorporeal."
Wildfire flavor, hang on to your seat, still moving. The OGs and the little doobie. Now, have them straight wildin' out in the aisles and the stairs. I speak so y'all can understand this. Rap will cash in at least 100 grand for the span. Eternally, feet planted firmly. L.I., BK, Queen State, and Germany stands. Block plants on the mall here today. For all y'all who veered away from the righteous path, I'm here to school you with the staff off the app. We handing out flicks and autographs for the newbies. Puffin' doobies in the tinted out car. I maintain under the radar.
Large Pro with the radar.
Tonight's recipe is read from the Moosewood Cookbook by Molly Katzen. Calzone. 1 calzone per person plus a green salad. A very complete dinner. This is an Italian pastry, a cheese-filled turnover with pizza dough. Crisp on the outside, creamy on the inside. It's an exotic departure from Italian-American cliches. This recipe will prepare about 6 servings. It will take 2.5 hours preparation time. The dough. 1. Soften together 1.5 teaspoons dry yeast, 1 tablespoon honey, 1 cup wrist temperature water. 2. Add 1.5 teaspoons salt, 2.5 to 3 cups flour, mixed whole wheat and white, or just white. 3. Knead 10 to 15 minutes. Cover and set in a warm place to rise until doubled in bulk, about 1 hour. Prepare filling while dough rises. Punch down. Divide into 6 sections and roll out in rounds 1/4 inch thick. Fill with 1/2 to 3/4 cup filling, placing filling on 1/2 of the circle, leaving a 1/2 inch rim. Moisten the rim with water. Fold the empty side over and crimp the edge with your favorite fork. Prick it here and there. Bake on an oily tray and in a preheated oven 450 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes or until crisp and lightly browned. Brush each pastry with a little butter as it emerges from the oven. The filling: 1 pound ricotta cheese, 2 cloves crushed garlic, 1/2 cup minced onion, 1 pound fresh spinach, 2 packed cups grated mozzarella, salt, pepper, and a 1/2 cup freshly grated Parmesan. A dash of nutmeg and 2 tablespoons butter. Wash, stem, and finely chop the spinach. Steam it quickly on medium-high heat, adding no additional water. When wilted and deep green, it is done and should be removed to mixing bowl with slotted spoon. 2. Saute onion and garlic in butter until translucent and soft. Combine all ingredients, mix well, salt and pepper to taste. And that is how to make a calzone, as per the directions of the Moosewood Cookbook. Thanks again for tuning into my show. Tune in next week for the continuation of The Selma of the North and also of Manufacturing Consent, The Political Economy of the Mass Media by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky, and other random readings. Thanks again. I'm your host, Cassius King, and have a good night.
फ्रेंड्स, मैं डेविड ब्राउन आज इस ख्याल की खुशी से फूला नहीं समा रहा कि मैं एक ऐसे अजीम फनकार, महान कलाकार, ग्रेट आर्टिस्ट को आपसे मिलाने का काम कर रहा हूं। There he is. Come, sing and conquer.